eggs, flowers, creepy uncles in equally creepy costumes. For many of my fellow traumatized American youths, Easter was about as good as springtime got. But for Russians, it's a lot more Russian-y. My friend who's been just my co-pilot this last year in Russia invited me to celebrate Pascha, the Orthodox version of Easter, this year with her family so I could try and get maybe a bit more of a real feel for a holiday than I'm typically used to getting being such an outsider. So we set off on Friday and we drove to her hometown of Ryazan, which I did 2 videos about last year if you guys are interested. And we got to walk through a small local festival on the way to her family's home. When we arrived at her parents' place, we had kind of an impromptu surprise birthday celebration. Happy birthday, Svetlana, which was followed by something finally pretty familiar to my own experience, coloring eggs. I thought that that was a pretty American thing to do, but no, it seems like the old world also has this tradition. But unlike back home, they don't just color them, they use these kind of weird whole egg covering stickers. And they have images, of course, of, fairy tales and Orthodox Christian symbols, which for obvious reasons would be new to me. Now, there's a game that you normally play with these eggs, but we need them to dry, so we left them alone, and we spent the rest of the evening just having a wonderful time hanging out with their little nephews and wrestling, trying to get all of our energy out before we went to bed early, because the night doesn't end just here. In Russia, the Easter celebration begins at midnight, so our next journey began closer to about 10 or 11 p.m. All right, everybody, it is 10:37 p.m., That's why it's dark here. Maybe we can turn on a light so you guys can see me better. That's better. Okay, so it's 10:37 p.m. In Russia, they are predominantly Eastern Orthodox, and their Easter is 1 week, at least this year, after regular, or at least regular to me, Western Easter. And it begins with a midnight vigil where they have like a parade of people, and there's lots of candles. It's very ornate and beautiful. And Svetlana, my friend that's here that we're going around and seeing all this stuff with, has never seen it, wanted to see it this year, and I'm obliging. So I'm very tired, but we woke up. We're gonna drive to the Ryazan, the main Ryazan cathedral, which is, if I remember right, it's like 600 or 700 years old, and they're doing essentially the same routine from even long before that. So I will take over in the studio. I'll take you guys there. This midnight celebration goes all the way back to the earliest times of Christianity, where they celebrated the resurrection of the God-man the minute the day broke forth. Here in Russia, the entire village would get up and head for the local church with their personal candles lit, with icons, with flags and different symbols, expecting to see something almost otherworldly. Even today, when we were driving about, the streets looked abandoned compared to what we are normally used to seeing in Ryazan. You might see a kid here or there on one of those rentable scooters, but it was such an eerie feeling. The closer and closer we got to the city center, the more we began to sense the season. So we're walking to the cathedral already. We're pretty far. We're just by this statue, which is in like the town square, and we're already smelling incense. So they are fogging this place up with sacred incense. This is it. This is church incense. That's what that smell is.
I smell gas.
No, I smell incense, 100%. To add to that, there was zero parking anywhere within a 10-minute walk of the main cathedral. All of the spots were taken, which is, again, pretty rare for this area. So that tells me people are intentionally now heading to church. So we parked pretty far away, and we got to check out some new angles of Ryazan that I didn't get to show you guys before. You can see the city at night, and the mixture of kind of imperial and Soviet buildings that are everywhere. You can see the annoying street lines that they have, like tram or trolley buses everywhere that kind of ugly up the sky, at least in my opinion. And that opened the door to us to finally get to the cathedral. It starts with this front open park, and you can visibly see the fog. The incense fog is just thick in the air through here because there's a chapel here. And when you walk past that chapel, you can see the main Kremlin of Ryazan. A Kremlin just is like a capital of a city. It's like a fortress. And every city has one, or at least every major city has one. And inside the Kremlin, that red wall that's all around it, there are cathedrals and monasteries and princes' palaces. And in this case, the main cathedral here was actually closed, but the side cathedral is where everything tonight is going to take place. We walked up and we saw the place so full, it was utterly impossible for us to get inside. People were packed like sardines. But you'd never know it if you were just walking through the city that something like this was happening, and it's where basically everybody is. I was very lucky that right when they started to come out, I was able to film because you heard a noise. There was bells ringing, doors open, light shone through the front door of this place, and out processed clergyman after clergyman in these very elaborate vestments that they had, holding icons and candles and flags. And they were followed by everyone that was inside of the temple. Everyone was singing songs and chanting, bringing incense with them out into the world. And we got kind of caught up in it because we were also on the outside rails waiting to get inside. It was almost like a clown car of clergymen. And they all were just stepping out into the world declaring that Christ indeed has risen, Christos voskriese, as they say here. And everyone would reply with, he has risen indeed. Now, it would be easy to say tens of people or hundreds of people, but to be honest, I think there was at least 1,000 people that were a part of this parade. I've cut up the parade here, so if you're interested in seeing the whole unedited parade, I have a link down below. You're going to be able to go on there, check everything out, see how awesome this really was. But it was at least 1,000 people. And unlike a lot of these religious parades that I've seen, they weren't just old people. It was young and old, entire families. We saw dating couples that got together and said, hey, let's go on a church date, which is very unique, at least for me. And they all were singing the same hymn that they've waited a whole year to sing together. It's truly one of those mystical moments you only experience a couple times in life, and I'm almost jealous that these guys here at least get to experience this every single year. This was an unbelievable experience for me. But for now, the parade was ending and the faithful were moving back into their beloved church. We assumed that these people mostly would clear out, so maybe we could go inside and get a picture, but that was definitely not the case. There was even more people and it was even more packed. So instead of trying to make our way in and maybe potentially push some people out, which would not be very kind of me on this Easter holiday, we thanked our local babushka who gave us some candles that we could hold during the parade and decided to head home for some much needed sleep, because tomorrow we're eating kulich. Now, what is kulich, you might be asking me? Kulich, for Russians, there's, I guess, hardly more of an Easterly image than this funny-looking fruitcake. This is kulich. It's kind of sweet, it's kind of plain, at least compared to like a birthday cake from America, which is essentially just pure sugar. But it is really tasty nonetheless. It has raisins and plums and all sorts of really good stuff in it. They sell these bad boys all over the place leading up to Easter, and it's big business for all like the mom and pop shop bakeries that are around town. And on top of this, they had this really cool but kind of weird cake made entirely of cream cheese. I know it sounds weird, and I think it kind of was weird, but this is called pascha. This is actually the word used for Easter, is what they call it. This triangular one, me and Svetlana brought from a store as a gift to her parents, and her mom actually made one herself, which kind of looks like a bowl because they used a bowl mold instead of the traditional kind of cone mold. And both of them were equally delicious. I was thoroughly pleased with my pascha experience. Now, for those of you who are wondering, why on earth do they eat a specific fruit cake and a cottage cheesecake on Easter? It's actually because Orthodox Christians up until Easter have 40 days of fasting, and that fast is called the Great Fast, and it's essentially being vegan for a month and a half before Easter. But us, on our part, we enjoyed the Kulich and Pasha without the Lenten fast, and we enjoyed it over the annual speech from the patriarch, which I could not understand at all. But when his sermon began, he started with Christ has risen. Everyone said he is risen indeed. And finally, after his sermon was done, we did another first for me, which was a game that they play with the eggs we painted from yesterday that determines good luck for the year to come. I was the champion for today. My egg survived the most smashes, so I was feeling pretty good about the next stop on this weekend tour, which you will have to wait till next week to see. If you like this video, be sure to like it down below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or compliments, feel free to leave them in the comment box down below. I do personally read all of them. If you'd like to support me financially, you can always do that on Patreon. You can check out my Discord, my Twitter, any number of things to support my channel. I want to give you a personal thank you so much for sticking around this long. I'm excited that you enjoyed this content. I hope I get to know you. Leave a comment down below, introduce yourself. I'd love to actually interact with you and get to know you. So have a wonderful Easter. Christ has risen indeed, and I will see you all next week in Konstantinova. Bye-bye.